Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new real-life car review. In this episode I'm driving the updated Hyundai Ioniq 5. Not only did Hyundai implement a lot of upgrades and updates to this car, there is also a new top-of-the-range trim level, which happens to be this car. This is the Ioniq 5N, a very track-oriented high-performance car. Now, small disclaimer beforehand. The format of real-life car reviews is to test reasonably affordable cars in real-life situations. This car is so track-oriented and so powerful, the format isn't really suitable for this car. But luckily there are plenty of other car reviews and thousands of other videos on YouTube that show the performance of this car. And I'll link to my two favorite videos in the description box. The updates that apply to this car also apply to the rest of the Ioniq 5 lineup, and in this real life car review I want to show you what it's like to live with this car in real life situations, and of course I will try the performance a little bit within the legal limits or maybe a little bit over it. But anyway, without any further ado, let's start with a quick walk around. Okay folks, there it is, with a base price of 73,000 euros. This is not a cheap car, but let me tell you, this car gives much more expensive cars a run for their money when it comes to performance. 73,000 euros is the base price. As tested, this car costs just over 75,000 euros, and reason is the paint color. There is only one color that comes without extra cost. I'll blink the name in screen. If you get any of the other colors, you pay 695 euros, and if you want a matte color, you pay almost 1100 euros for the color option. I would not recommend getting a matte color, because if you put this color, this matte clear color, through a car wash, you can get shiny spots, and that's pretty hard to buff out. If you have a gloss color and you go through the car wash and you get dull spots, yeah, you can polish it, but you can't do it the other way around for a matte color, so I would not recommend it. Okay, let's walk to the back, because there it is, and I left the car dirty on purpose. Voila folks, this is the rear wiper, and as you can see it almost hits this rear view camera and this third brake light that the N version has, but it's really nice to have this. And while we're at here, let's open the trunk. No change to the cargo space. I believe it's 480 liters. My camera bag and the charging cable are in here. It's very roomy and the floor is level with the opening, which is very nice. It doesn't have extra cargo space underneath. There is a tire repair kit. There's a little bit of storage room where you can maybe hide some small shoes, but the power electronics and the rear motor live underneath there, so we have to do with this. But when it comes to cargo and interior space, there is no reason to complain with this car, because it's incredibly spacious. So let's close up. Let's have a look at the details of the N version. Okay, the design of the N version is completely different. You get these nice stripes over here. It's also in the front. I showed you the brake light. And there is the little fog light in the diffuser, which really acts as a diffuser. And speaking of arrows and diffusers, all the aerodynamic changes are functional on this car. So these aren't fake fans. That this really is a relief for a pressure point, that high pressure stagnation point that built up here, and it guides air over the rear wheels. Okay, now on wheels and tires. 21-inch special forged alloy wheels wrapped in P0 tires, and the size is 275/35. So these are huge wheels, and these tires are not cheap. And if you use the performance of this car, your local tire supplier will be your best friend real soon. Special skirts, red lining over here. Huge front brakes. They are steel brakes. There are no carbon ceramics available, especially the Vela brakes. I do have something to say about the brakes, but that's for the drive segment. And here is the specially designed front end, completely different. Oh look, that's a nice boat, nice color. Okay, back to the car. It's a bit in the shade at this moment, but this is the specially designed front end. Yeah, it doesn't look much different from the front end of the regular versions. Still has that fairly aggressive front end, and there are active shutters in the front bumper. But all in all, I've been driving this car for a couple of days now, and people really seem to know what this car is all about, because when they see this front end appear in the rear view mirror, every car, even the high performance cars, move over. So this car already has made a name for itself. Okay, now let's have a peek under the hood and see what lives under there. It's very windy today, so I hope you can still hear me. Before I open up the hood, I want to point out this is a so-called clamshell hood, so it goes over the wheels. If you have a side impact where you would normally change the front fender if you have a dent or damage to it, you now have to change the entire hood, I'm afraid. So that doesn't seem anything that's easy to repair, and from a cost and an insurance perspective, that's very expensive. And if you open up the hood, you can actually see that the paint color is actually gloss paint, and they covered it with a matte clear coat to give it that matte effect. Okay, before I talk about the performance of this car, I need to point out that the regular versions of the Ioniq 5 have upgraded battery pack. The standard range now has a 63 kilowatt hour battery, and the long range version has an 84 kilowatt hour battery. That long range version is also available with all-wheel drive. I've driven that car in the past, and with 325 horsepower and over 600 newton meters of torque, that car is more than fast and power enough for public roads. That is an incredible car to drive. But this doubles that. The standard power output is 600 horsepower, and in boost mode it cranks up to 650 horsepower. So that's double the power output than the all-wheel drive most powerful version, not being the N version. The torque is even more impressive. 740 newton meters of torque in normal drive mode, and when you use the boost function it cranks up to 770 newton meters. Now the boost function only works for 10 seconds, and then it needs 10 seconds to cool down the engine and the power electronics. But man, these are torque numbers. If you use the torque a couple of times in an afternoon, you can shred those expensive Pirelli P0 tires to shreds. And as said, you'll be good friends with the local tire supplier. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about this powertrain. There's a lot of development going in there. You can see it is covered up with this plastic panel, where the other versions have a small frunk in here, and the rear-wheel drive version, so the standard version, have a larger frunk, but that's not available on the N version. Also need to point out it has a variable suspension. You can feel the suspension change when you change the drive mode, but I'll talk more about that in the drive segment. We've seen the trunk, so let's head over to the interior, where I'll talk you through the changes and updates to the interior. Okay, let's hop aboard these very nice sport seats. I'll put the GoPro aside. It has very nice sport seats with very nice bolstering for the seat and the seat back. And when you use this car on track and see what this car is capable, you really need that bolstering. But I need to point out, these seats do not have electrical adjustment. They are just manually adjustable. Well, that's not a bad thing in itself. It allows the seat to be mounted lower to the car floor. And all in all, when you sit in this car, yeah, you do not sit very low. I can only lower the seat one notch. You're not really deep inside the dashboard, and when you get in and out, you can see that the seating position in relation to the road surface is about this high, so not really, actually really close to the floor as in the Toyota Supra. Okay, now we have to talk about the interior. First and foremost, the important changes that have been made are small changes to the climate control panel. We now have a direct shortcut button that leads to the heated and ventilated seats. So they may not be electrical, but in this version you do get ventilated seat. Let me put it on because it's pretty warm right now. So this button allows you to a direct shortcut to the heated seat functions. I believe the regular version, or at least the Kia EV6, now has a shortcut button on the center console. And speaking of center console, the N version gets this special console to create more of a cockpit atmosphere, where the regular version have the sliding console, and this area between the on the floor is open for the passengers. It gives more of a living room feel, I always think. Okay, there is the gauge cluster, which is changed for the N version. You can still put it in the regular version mode with 2 round dials. This is exclusive to the N version with a lot of menus over here. Now it shows that warning over here, but I will not close the door. We have an indication for the front and rear motor temperature, battery temperature, and even if you floor this car on public roads, the battery and motor temperature stay really low, and you can see that the rear motor is always a bit warmer, and I think that does most of the driving, so it's a rear wheel drive biased car. Then we have this menu over here that shows the torque and tire pressure, and well, this is the trip computer over here. I can already talk about the energy consumption. The brochure states it's about 22 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, but when I drive in my calm normal driving style, I average out to 16.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Okay, steering wheel. I hope the camera picks this up. The steering wheel has its completely own design. There are real openings over here and a very small center section over here. Here's the button for the drive mode. It has Eco, Normal and Sport, and NGB stands for and Grin Boost. And this is the button you use to call up that overboost function. Then we have two, I would say fun buttons over here, because can you hear it? It simulates a normal transmission, and when you use it while driving, let me put it out, you actually feel the torque go down a little bit during the simulated shifts. And it seems very gimmicky, but it adds a lot to the driving pleasure of this car, which I'll show you in the drive segment. Now, I thought that was just a gimmick, but the noise you hear in the interior you can also hear outside. And when I drove here 15 minutes ago, there were a lot of bicyclists on the road, and it's being windy, and the bikers had headwind, and they did not hear the electric car approaching from the back. So what I did, I pushed this button and it made these simulated engine noises, and then the bicyclist heard me and he could go out of the way. Anyway, wireless phone charger, and this is real nice. There are two connections. This one is mainly for charging, and this one can be used for charging and for data when you push it. Now it's in USB data mode. Both are USB-C outlets. Quick look at the seats. They have integrated headrest, and this is real Alcantara. And I must say, Alcantara seats are the best for sportiest car. They are a sort like Velcro. When you sit down, once you sit, you stick, you don't slide around. This is really nice for cars. There are a lot of sports cars that have Alcantara on the steering wheel, but it's only fun for the first few months, and after a while it gets really sticky and doesn't have a nice feel to it. This steering wheel has a great feel to it, nice size, nice grip, and I will tell in the driving segment how the steering feels. I think I've covered the most important changes for the front passengers. Let's have a quick peek in the back to see what the rear passenger space is like. Now, before I hop into the back, you can see that the door opening is just incredible, and that's the one thing that we know of the Ioniq 5, is that the interior space and especially the rear passenger space is just outstanding. It's so roomy, it's so spacious. The rear seat slides forth and back, and the rear seats, they recline, so you can always get a nice seating position. Even if you have 4 real tall adults in this car, you have plenty of space available. Now a quick walkthrough through the rear passenger compartment. You can see there is a nice logo in the seat backs of the front seats, so the rear passengers know that they're in something special. Over here we have 2 USB-C outlets. There is a small reading light, and of course an armrest with 2 cup holders. And rear passengers have this nice vent in the B pillar, and also they have heated seats in 2 settings. And also, I'll try to show you this. I can do this with one hand. There is this nice sunshade over here, and let's do a quick window test. Oh, I haven't got a camera framed right, but anyway, view towards the outside is just great. But when you close the window, it's pretty dark, because this interior is only available in black. But it's not claustrophobic by any stretch of the imagination, but it could be a bit brighter, a bit more colorful perhaps. Anyway, that being said, let's head out for the drive. Let's dial the air conditioning down a little bit, it's getting warm. Really grateful for the ventilated seats in this car. Let's switch them on too. Anyway, driving segment. My first things I want to point out is the suspension setup of this car. In normal drive mode, and this car always starts off in normal drive mode, the suspension is actually very bouncy, much bouncier than I expected based on the track orientation of this car. When you drive in town, where we have a lot of speed bumps over here, there is a lot of vertical motion in this car. You see that a lot nowadays with EVs, especially in the rear axle, where the rebound of the suspension isn't that much absorbed by the shock absorbers. It jumps out after the car comes over the bump, and that's the same with this car. I didn't expect it, and it can be a bit uncomfortable. We're approaching a speed bump over here. Let's carry a little bit too much speed over here. Car really goes up and down. It's very bouncy. Now it's very easy to do something about it, and let's switch the car into sport mode. In sport mode you can tell that the ride is a bit stiffer, a bit harsher, but it doesn't have the vertical motion over speed bumps. So when I drive this car, especially when I drive with passengers in the car, I prefer to drive in the sport mode and just take it easy. Now another speed bump over here, and there's it. Suspension compresses, rebounds, and the car is settled straight after the speed bump. Anyway, then we have the steering. I really like the steering of this car. As I said, I like the shape and the size and the thickness of the rim of the steering wheel. It's really nice to the touch. Let's give way to oncoming traffic over here. But the steering itself, it's very nicely weighted, and as you can change it in the N mode, I can call it up via the home setting. There is a separate setting for the N models where you can customize everything about this car, and it has some settings which the Hyundai headquarters asked me not to test on public roads, which I'm not going to do. But you can set the stability control and the displays and all, but also the steering and the response time of the throttle. But overall, the default setting for sport mode and normal mode for the steering wheel is very nice. Now, there is a small side note on the steering, but when you have the front wheel drive or the all-wheel drive version with this car, the amount of steering in the front axle is limited, and with those large 21-inch wheels it's even more limited. So the steering angle, the steering input you have while maneuvering, while you back up into a parking spot, is fairly limited, and I always find myself go back and forth one time to get a car straight into a parking spot. So the turning radius of this car is actually huge. This car is also capable of reading more than just the speed signs. It also reads the warning signs, and it specifically notifies me when you have an S-curve in the road, either to the right or to the left, like we have over here. You go left, you go right, the car warns you, and I do not know if I should read that as a little demon on my shoulder or a little guardian angel. You can interpret it both ways, I guess. When it's slippery, you should be extra careful in those corners, but with the car that has the performance of this Ioniq 5N, it of course can add a little bit of fun to carry some extra speed in such corners. In the walk-around section, I said I had a remark on the brakes, and I have several remarks on the brake. The first are the hydraulic brakes themselves, and I'm not sure what happened to this car, if it's product property of this car, but when I have the regenerative braking completely switched off, you can use the foot brake. It combines regenerative braking with the hydraulic brakes. But this morning I had to make a hard stop. There was somebody not paying attention and pulling out on the road, so I had to brake really hard. I had to use the hydraulic brakes of the car, and I had to push the pedal real hard, and the deceleration, the braking force was quite disappointing. So I'm not sure what's going on with the hydraulic brakes. So that's one thing. I must say that this is a press car, and this car has seen some pretty hard use. Maybe that has something to do with it. Now onto the regenerative braking combined with the brake pedal itself. Currently I have set it in auto mode. You set it in auto mode by keep the right lever, this right flipper, keep it retracted for 2 seconds, then it goes into auto mode. It's my preferred mode. Reason for that is when you use the non-automatic mode, you have 4 different levels for the regenerative braking, and I've said it in many Ioniq 5 tests before. When you need a little bit of extra braking power, for instance when you approach a roundabout, you use a little bit of extra braking force, release the brake, it immediately goes back to the regenerative braking you have preset, and it can be a bit hard, and I always try to toggle back the level of regenerative braking while I'm using the foot pedal, but it's impossible to do in a Hyundai. So I'm using the brake and I want to toggle it back, and now it says no, the regenerative braking presets are not available, and I really wish that Hyundai had improved upon that. And it is something that you can do, for instance, in a Nissan Ariya, and it's a real nice thing to have. And my third talking point about the brakes and the regenerative braking is the use of the brake lights. When you use regenerative braking on level 1, when you lift the accelerator like I do now, there's very light regenerative braking, but what the car does, it always puts on the brake lights, and it can be very annoying for the cars behind you, because it seems you're actually braking while in reality you're coasting. And I think Hyundai could improve on that by applying the brake lights only from level 2 to level 4 and not in level 1 regenerative braking. Find it a bit annoying. Well, those of you who have seen more real-life car reviews know what time it is right now. We're approaching the highway, so we'll give it the beans on the on-ramp, and giving the beans in this car is something that requires a lot of attention and focus, because this car is blisteringly fast. So we're in sport mode right now. Yeah, I was already in sport mode. Here is the on-ramp. Hope the suction cups of the GoPro holes go boost, and here we go. And that, guys, was crazy fast. Now that boost lasts for 10 seconds, then it needs at least 10 seconds to cool down. But the thing is, I did it yesterday on the highway, and the cars in front of me would overtake because they didn't see I was coming that fast under acceleration. So on the highway, even on the highway, it's I would say a dangerous thing to do, but you really have to be aware of other drivers. Don't expect you coming in that fast from behind. So the Ioniq 5 really benefits from all the updates and upgrades. It's not just the 5N version, also the regular version of the Ioniq 5 have those updates. Yeah, and the car has become a bit more practical, and technology has been made up to date. There's only one thing that I need to point out, and I just discovered it last evening. It's that time of year again, it gets dark early. The headlights of this car, it has automatic high beams, but they are not adaptive. So that's one. That's not entirely up to date with the technology available in other cars. And also the response time of the automatic high beams is quite slow. I've had a lot of oncoming traffic flashing with their headlights to signal me that my headlights were blinding them. And also the light image and the light density isn't exactly up to speed with what modern cars are capable of. You can see a little bit of discoloration and some darker spots in the light image, especially when you have dip beams. But my point is, given the performance of the car, the headlights should be better, in my humble opinion. Well, that being said, I think I have touched upon all my talking points, so let's head out to the middle of nowhere, where I'll give you my final thoughts on the updated Ioniq 5, and in specific this Ioniq 5N. See you in a minute. So, what are my thoughts on the updated Hyundai Ioniq 5? Well, I think that pre-update this car was already the benchmark in its class when you look at its size and its price point. It's always been one of the better, in my opinion, the best EV in that class vehicle. And now with the updates, the small technical updates to the infotainment and the buttons for the heated steering wheel, the shortcut buttons, and of course the rear screen wiper, that's a big plus. Car and overall throughout the entire range, oh, it's locking down, has greatly improved. Now onto the N version, which is a completely different version in the lineup. It has twice the power of the existing most powerful version, going from 325 to 650 horsepower under full boost. Well, the question you have to ask is, am I going to use that power? If you want to stick to driving on public roads and you don't have the money or time to go through racetracks, I think, and you want a performance car, I think you can stick with a regular top of the range version, and that is the long range all-wheel drive car. For public roads, even for the German Autobahn, that car is fast enough, though admittedly the top speed is limited to 185 kilometers an hour. When you really want to spend this money on a car, 75,000 euros, and you're planning to use that power, yeah, you really need to make financial reservations for improving your driving skills, which is highly recommended. Come back to that in a minute. Spend some money to go to track days to practice your driving skills on the racetracks, and also save a lot of money for tires, because this thing eats tires. The thing I wanted to say is there are a lot of people that thought they had the driving skills to drive this car, but this is one of 2 press loaners in the Netherlands, and the other car has been out of service for 3 months this year because more experienced drivers than me keep on crashing that car. That's what you have to keep in mind, that this car has capabilities and powers that are just not suitable for the public road. I said it in the introduction. Hyundai asked me not to test certain functions on public roads, and if I wanted to test them, I would have to go to a closed off section on an industrial state, private industrial state, just to see what this car is capable. But I decided not to do that because the tire wear is already significant on this car, and I don't want to get in trouble next week when it's raining and when I have to return the car. So there's that. You have to keep in mind that when you really want to utilize the power that this car has to offer, yeah, you really should go improve your driving skills, and if you already think you have driving skills, go on a racetrack. But other than that, when you look at the fun factor and the form factor, and with that I mean the design still is unique and it's a super practical car, but those two combined in this car, the Ioniq 5N, is really unmatched. Anyway, with that I would like to end this real-life car review. I hope you liked following me along, and if you did, please let me know by subscribing to my channel, put on notification, give me a like, and if you have any questions or constructive feedback, let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you would like to help support the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. I leave the link for that down below in the description box, and also in the description box are 2 links to videos of more experienced drivers test driving this car on track. For now, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye!